Today, we're diving into a topic that has been generating significant buzz within the wrestling world. It involves none other than CM Punk, a man who's never been shy about speaking his mind. CM Punk is one of those figures in professional wrestling that evokes strong opinions, and whether you're a diehard supporter or someone who has had your doubts about him, there's no denying his impact on the business. His career has had its fair share of highs and lows, and just recently, Punk opened up about something that has had the wrestling world talking. If you look at CM Punk's career, it's clear that he's gone through numerous transformations. From his early indie days to his run in WWE, CM Punk was always an anomaly in the world of professional wrestling. He didn't fit the mold of the traditional wrestler. He didn't have the typical look, the typical charisma, or the usual style, but that's exactly what set him apart. He became a trailblazer, paving the way for a new generation of wrestlers who didn't look or act like the ones that came before them. Punk's early days in WWE were particularly challenging. At first, he was a fish out of water. He didn't seem like he belonged, and many people questioned whether he would make it. It wasn't until he found his footing in feuds with Jeff Hardy and The Undertaker in 2009 that Punk really started to shine. That's when he began to carve out a name for himself, solidifying his place in WWE history. Fast forward to 2023, and Punk's career has been a roller coaster ride. His departure from WWE, his time in UFC, and his eventual return to professional wrestling in AEW all served as significant chapters in his legacy. However, his run in AEW was far from smooth, and it ended on a sour note. CM Punk has always been a divisive figure. People either love him or they don't. His return to WWE in November 2023 was met with mixed reactions. But one thing is clear, CM Punk always elicits a response. Whether people are cheering for him or against him, they can't ignore him. His presence in the wrestling world always demands attention, and that's a rare quality that not many wrestlers possess. Despite his fame, CM Punk is far from perfect. He has made his fair share of mistakes, both in and out of the ring. However, one thing that's undeniable is his confidence. He's always had the belief in his own abilities, whether it's on the mic or in the ring. That confidence has carried him through some of the most controversial moments in wrestling history. But if we take a closer look at his AEW run, we can see that it was a turbulent journey. It was filled with highs and lows, and ultimately, it ended in disaster. Punk's time in AEW was plagued by backstage politics, personal conflicts, and miscommunication. From the moment he stepped into the company, it seemed like trouble was brewing. AEW's chaotic environment, combined with Punk's personality, created a powder keg that was destined to explode. When you reflect on CM Punk's time in AEW, it's hard not to see the problems in a different light. At the time, there was so much excitement surrounding Punk's arrival in AEW. Fans were hopeful that he would help elevate the company and bring it to new heights. But as we now know, things didn't work out as planned. Punk's arrival in AEW was meant to be a game-changer, but it quickly became clear that he wasn't a natural fit for the company. Despite his extensive experience in WWE and other promotions, CM Punk had always been a WWE guy at heart. His mentality, his approach to the business, and his preferences all align more closely with WWE's style than AEW's. One of the most telling comments Punk made recently came during an appearance on the Ringer Wrestling podcast, where he discussed his decision to join AEW back in 2021. He admitted that he went with the devil he didn't know, meaning AEW CEO Tony Khan, over the devil he did know, which was Vince McMahon and WWE. Punk explained that in 2021, he felt that AEW offered him something different, something new. He took a gamble, hoping that it would work out, but in hindsight, it's clear that the gamble didn't pay off. Punk's decision to leave WWE and join AEW was a risky one, and it didn't help that AEW was still in its infancy. The company was still finding its identity, and the backstage dynamics were far from stable. Punk entered AEW with high expectations, but it didn't take long for the cracks to start showing. His interactions with the AEW EVPs and other backstage figures were often strained, and it became clear that there was a significant difference in mentality between Punk and the rest of the AEW roster. Punk, a product of the old-school wrestling mentality, found himself clashing with a younger, more freewheeling AEW locker room. It didn't take long for the tension to boil over. The infamous Brawlout incident at AEW's All Out pay-per-view was the breaking point for Punk's AEW run. What was supposed to be a triumphant return to wrestling quickly turned into chaos. The backstage brawl, which involved Punk and several AEW stars, marked the beginning of the end for Punk's time in AEW. The fallout from that incident was swift, with reports emerging about the toxic environment within the company. It became clear that AEW had its own set of problems, and Punk, with his larger-than-life personality, was not the right fit for the company at that time. However, Punk wasn't completely to blame for the failure of his AEW run. There were numerous factors at play, including AEW's management, the backstage politics, and the overall culture within the company. Punk, for all his flaws, is a veteran of the business, and he has a deep understanding of what it takes to succeed in the wrestling world. But AEW, as a company, was still figuring things out. There were growing pains, and Punk, despite his star power, couldn't fix everything on his own. One of the most significant issues with Punk's time in AEW was the way the company handled his return. AEW had been trying to create its own identity as an alternative to WWE, but by bringing in Punk, they were attempting to straddle the line between the old school and new school philosophies. The decision to split the rosters and put Punk on a Saturday night program called Collision was a strange one. AEW's flagship show, Dynamite, was where the company's main events were happening, and Punk, as one of the biggest stars in wrestling, was relegated to a secondary show that didn't have the same level of viewership or exposure. It didn't make much sense. Furthermore, Punk's divisive presence in AEW led to a situation where certain wrestlers were prohibited from working with him. This created a toxic environment, and the backstage drama was never going to help the company grow. In WWE, on the other hand, the rules are clear. You need to get along with everyone or you're gone. Vince McMahon, for all his flaws, ran a tight ship. He didn't tolerate drama, and if you didn't fit into the system, you were out. But AEW, under Tony Khan's leadership, had a more lenient approach. This lack of structure led to issues, and Punk, with his old-school mindset, couldn't thrive in that environment. As for the medical situation surrounding Punk's AEW run, there are still many unanswered questions. Punk has hinted that AEW didn't cover his medical bills, but there has been no official clarification on the matter. The situation is murky, and until it's addressed, it will continue to linger over AEW's reputation. Punk's health issues, coupled with the ongoing backstage drama, made his run in AEW even more complicated. It's possible that if AEW had taken better care of him, things could have turned out differently, but we'll never know. Looking back, it's clear that CM Punk's time in AEW was never going to work. AEW and Punk were two forces that just didn't align. The company had its own vision for how it wanted to operate, and Punk, with his old-school mentality, couldn't mesh with it. The problems were evident from the start, but it wasn't until the Brawlout incident that things completely fell apart. The idea of Punk returning to WWE was always a long shot. The bad blood between Punk and Vince McMahon was well documented, and their relationship was never going to be repaired. Punk's departure from WWE in 2014 was a bitter one, and the environment in WWE during the years following his exit wasn't one that Punk could have returned to without major changes. The backstage culture in WWE, under Vince McMahon, was toxic, and Punk's frustration with the company was evident in his actions. He was outspoken about his dissatisfaction with WWE, and it's clear that there was no way he could have come back without addressing the long-standing issues. Even though Triple H was more open to working with Punk, the idea of a Punk return to WWE was always a difficult one to imagine. The wounds were too deep, and the history between Punk and Vince McMahon was too complicated to overcome. But now, as Punk makes his return to WWE in 2023, it's clear that things have changed. Vince McMahon is no longer in charge, and Triple H is running the show. But whether Punk can truly reconcile with WWE remains to be seen. It's going to be a rocky road ahead, and only time will tell if Punk can finally make peace with the company that made him a star. CM Punk's career is one of the most fascinating in the history of professional wrestling. From his early days as an indie darling to his controversial AEW run and eventual return to WWE, Punk has always been a polarizing figure. He's a man who has never been afraid to speak his mind, and he's always been willing to take risks, even when the odds were stacked against him. But whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying that CM Punk has had a profound impact on the wrestling world.